Well, welcome to another episode of Way of Life podcast. We're actually doing a special episode today. I've got here with me my mate Phil. Phil, he's not normally a speaker. He's not some theologian who's written a book or anything like that. He's actually the guy who does a lot of the behind the scenes stuff behind this, all the stuff that I actually can't do and I probably will never be able to do. But Phil, how are you, mate?
I'm well. It's unusual for me, like you said, to be on this side of the microphone, but here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So we're wanting to we thought we'd do a little episode for you guys around kind of the genesis or the beginnings of how Way of Life came about and what we're about and kind of some highlights from the year. So Phil, I'm gonna hand it to you a little bit here to guide this conversation. The tables have turned.
That's right. The tables have turned. The interviewer becomes the interviewee. So
Yep.
Let's do it.
All right.
So I thought that a good place to start would be to explore your original vision for Way of Life podcast, the vision that you first pitched to me back in October of 2020. And exploring what that was for you and then how that vision evolved to what it is today.
Yeah, no, that's probably a good place to start. So it actually goes further back than there a little bit. I was chatting with another guy who helps around with this podcast, Neil, and we were talking about how fun it would be to do a podcast or do just to kind of banter around just between the two of us and things like that. And then it got me thinking, and this was kind of early days COVID, like this was like the first lockdown that we had kind of in early 2020. And I was just like, oh, it'd be really cool to do one kind of through the church, or we could do some interviews, some people. And then COVID got pretty crazy, and then kind of all that got put on the back burner. And then how I remember it was that I kind of been like, oh yeah, it'd be kind of cool to pop its head up throughout the year. And then it was like probably the day before I sent you that message, and I was sleeping, and I don't normally get woken up by anything like crazy in the middle of the night, some epiphany, but it felt a little bit like that for me. I felt like God was kind of showing me some stuff and giving me some ideas. It was oddly specific. So I was kind of like, well, better take note. So yeah, it was in the middle of the night, and then it was kind of this podcast idea, and then because originally we were going to like just interview people and then just pre-record it and just let people listen to it and that kind of thing. And then
like
I thought,
a normal podcast that people are familiar with.
Yeah, a normal podcast. Ours is a little abnormal, and this is kind of where the idea came from, was that I thought it'd be cool to kind of do it live and then film it, but then have it available for future use and things like that. And I thought it'd be really cool in that, and it kind of just more and more I thought about it, it seemed like a good idea as me and you were kind of chatting it through. And kind of the idea was that we do it on a Sunday night once a month, and we've got a congregation that already come here and on a Sunday night and on a Sunday morning too, but it was kind of an opportunity for them to dive deep into some topics and to an approachable place, at least for most podcasts, where people who might not believe in Jesus or who might be kind of curious or want to kind of wrestle with these different topics and ideas might want to come along, and it actually kind of feels a little bit more organic.
A little less like a church service and more of just a conversation in which you can engage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which has been really, really cool. Like, yeah, we've seen some people come along and things like that. We get a little bit of engagement online as well. And that was the other thing. We wanted to live stream it at the same time. And I remember just telling you, and you're like, I could just see your brain just like clicking into pieces. Like, how do I do this? Like, how am I going to do that? You want to tell us like what was going on in your mind at that time?
So I do chuckle when you say that, because when I begin to think about something intently, my face turns in like blank, and
that's exactly what it was.
You can see me sort of processing stuff, but it doesn't look like I'm interested. The look that I portray is one of just like complete and utter disinterest.
Yeah.
Which in this case was not true. That was the complete opposite was happening.
Legitimately, I remember you did that. I told you the idea and you were just blank faced like you just said. And I
Yeah.
was just like, gosh, he hates it. I'm like, he mustn't like this idea. And I had to check in. I'm like, do you actually like it? I'm like, a few times.
Yeah, so I do apologize for that. But
Oh, that's
when you first pitched it to me, I immediately started thinking, okay, how can we make this work? How would it look?
Yeah.
And how can we do it in a way that is engaging and pleasing to look at as well? Like for our church, and I think this will be true for many churches at this time, we'd only been live streaming for maybe 8 months, 8 or 10 months at that point.
Yeah.
So we were still trying to find our feet in that arena. Like we got some gear that really helped us in that.
Oh, absolutely.
But we were still trying to sort of build a foundation of what a streaming a church service would look like.
Absolutely.
And then the podcast, albeit similar to a church service, it did add a different dimension to what a church service would be.
Absolutely.
And it was really exciting to begin to explore what that would look like.
Yeah.
And I think it opened up a few different opportunities to do things differently for us as well.
For sure.
And I think that the result is, I think it's something to be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to toot Way of Life's own horn here, but I think that it's a pretty cool thing that we've put together over the past year.
Absolutely.
So-
I mean, it's no small task to live stream a podcast, record it, and have like 3 cameras going at least kind of at a time.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about this in a minute, I think, but the added complexity of if you're like Zooming with someone, if they're not even with us, which has been really interesting. But it's cool because I think what I love about the idea is that it helps the people here at the church that we're already at, but also it expands to anyone else that wants to use it. And I'll often say that at the end of a podcast where I'm kind of like we're not here to get famous type of thing. Like at the end of the day, I'm happy if this just benefits the people in front of me. But I'm kind of like, if this is valuable, if this is helpful, I want people to see it. I don't want to be famous, but I want what we're talking about to be wrestled with. I want people to kind of think it through a little bit because... Yeah, I don't know if we're going to talk about this in a bit, but kind of the thinking behind the podcast or not. What are you thinking?
The thinking behind the podcast, as in like the idea behind it, or
Yeah, all right, I'll just go into it. So,
okay,
yeah, it's so I don't know. I see particularly I work with young people. I'm a youth and young adults pastor here at the church, and I think I just see that this world is becoming more and more complex. It's becoming more and more diverse. And there's so many ideas out there. It's kids and most people now have just been bombarded with ideas and ways of life. As to take the line of the name of our podcast, that like everyone's got to pick a way of life, and the way of life that they pick really matters. It truly matters, as we say. And often we're informed by so many different things. There's so many things that shape us, and the people we hang out with, the things we listen to, the people we don't listen to, all these different kinds of things, the amount of time we spend on Facebook, social media, Netflix, all these different things. There's so much that's inputting into us. And kind of the podcast is an idea of kind of going, let's pause and let's actually just take a step back. Let's take this objectively and let's just think about it. Because my experience, and I know yours as well, and many at this church, has been that we've wrestled with the truth claims of Jesus. We've wrestled with what the Bible shows us, and it hasn't kind of been found wanting. It actually makes a lot of sense, and it is the best way of life that we have ever found, and millions and millions of other people around the world think the same. So, but we don't want to ram that kind of down anyone's throat. That's why we want this to be approachable, if you know what I mean, and kind of open, and like you don't have to agree with it, which is really cool. I want people to kind of not just go, okay, I believe it, just straight off, just yep, cool. I want people to kind of go, nah, I've thought this through, and I believe it, and that's mostly why we do a bunch
Yeah.
of these podcasts.
Yeah, and I think it's also helpful too to, like you said, with the amount of content and information that we're constantly getting bombarded with every day, it's helpful to have a point of reference which is ultimate truth. And
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's what we're trying to get to with the podcast is to give people an opportunity to find our point of reference that we have in God and in Christ Jesus, and using that as your ultimate truth point in life, so that everything else that bombards you, you're not going to get taken off track and then find yourself wondering what happened, where am I, where do I go from here. If you've got that point of truth that you can always go to, then that helps you navigate your way through life.
Yeah.
And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we do, I think, to add upon, I think part of the epiphany we had as we got to talking about it was that we could do Q&A, where it wasn't like so unapproachable. It's only me and the other person that I'm talking to, and it's kind of just a conversation.
Yeah.
But that other people could be a part of it and actually ask the questions, kind of go and wrestle with it, like we say, to kind of go, like, you don't have to agree with it, do what you want, like, but wrestle with it and ask these questions. And I think that's been really valuable, to be honest. There's some good questions throughout this year.
There has been.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really good too, because when you're discussing topics like the topics we do here, inevitably people are going to have questions.
Absolutely.
So being able to ask those questions instead of listening to the podcast and going, oh, I have this question, I really wish that I could ask it.
Yeah.
I think that, that adds a little bit more of an interactive feel to it. And I
absolutely.
think, it's really helpful for not only the people here in the audience, but the people online as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's really cool. It's adaptable.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the guests that we've had on there have been able to answer the questions really well.
We've had some good quality guests this year. Gosh.
And there have been some banger questions too.
Yeah,
I've seen them come
absolutely.
through and just been, oh wow, that's a spicy question, or that's a big question, and
Spicy.
I remember just like waiting for, is Matt actually going to ask that question? And you do, and we're all just sitting there going, oh wow, this is going to be incredible. And a lot of the time it is. It's a really helpful answer.
It's been really cool. I remember our first podcast with Dan Patterson, and he's like, if anyone knows him, go back and watch. We've done 2 podcasts with him now.
Yeah.
I watched them. He's a phenomenal communicator. He's absolutely amazing mind, just not afraid of questions. So I was like, well, what better way to start the podcast with Dan Patterson? So we got it all set up. It's kind of our first setup time. And do you want to tell some of the story? I think you do. I think you do it a bit better than I do.
I think in anyone's language, our first episode was a very rough introduction to podcasting.
Yeah.
If the nerves of doing the first podcast weren't enough,
I had so many nerves.
The added complexity of what happened prior to us beginning just made it ridiculous. So we arrived here at about, I think it was about 3 o'clock. So 2.5 hours.
Yeah, we had a good amount of time.
Yeah. We had quite a bit of time to get ready and set up, chill out, and have a prayer and all that sort of stuff beforehand. And I think it was around probably 4 o'clock. All of a sudden, we lost power. And so like, okay, this is interesting.
Spicy, as you say.
Yeah, this is very spicy. And we literally couldn't do anything because we had no lights. We couldn't run the microphones. We couldn't do any streaming stuff. We were literally just dead in the water. We couldn't do a thing.
So it's a great way to start a podcast.
Yeah. So okay, well, there's not much we can do. Let's just give it all over to God. So we sort of got in a bit of a huddle, and we had a bit of a pray about it, and we just waited for a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
And then we realized, okay, we're gonna have to make a decision here of where we go from this point. Do we postpone it?
Yeah.
Or do we do it somewhere else, or do we do it outside
Because it was getting dark too, and we didn't have any
was.
lights in here.
Yeah. Do we do it in the car park with the headlights of the cars around and like a
Go
campfire?
rustic. Yeah.
Ultimately, the decision was made at about, I don't know, probably 4:45,
Yeah.
20 to 5 in the afternoon, to do it in the foyer where there's a lot of windows, there was a bit of natural light, and we could bring the cars up and shine the headlights through the window. So,
And then my wife, she went and got like a bunch of tea light candles because we were going to make it all like look nice, because she's the one that makes this kind of look nice most of the time, along with your wife.
Yeah, true that, true. I think I've got a photo of that. I'll put it in the,
it'd be cool.
the video and give you guys a look at the setup that we had. Our makeshift setup. So that was the plan. So everyone sort of banded together. By that time, we had people starting to arrive. So we all sort of pulled together and we set up in the foyer with a whole bunch of chairs and all these tea lights and stuff. And it was actually looking
pretty cool,
quite nice. Yeah. And I think it was about 20 past 5.
I think it was like bang on 5:25. I think. Yeah.
Yep. So we were just about to kick off, and all of a sudden, bang! The lights come on.
Power came back on.
We had power, and not gonna lie, I was sort of a bit like, this is really annoying.
I was like, oh come on! I would have rather them just stay off at that stage.
So
It's a mad scramble after that,
yeah,
basically.
we quickly got together and we said, okay, well, where do we go from here? Do we continue with what we've got set up?
Yeah.
Or do we revert back to plan A and try and get this first podcast done as we had intended? Which obviously that's what we did. We just sort of charged around, finished setting up, what we had already half pulled down. And I think we got going at about 6 o'clock, about half an hour behind.
People were really patient that night, which was awesome.
They were.
You know what stood out to me looking back on it? Like, this is a random kind of thought, but I just remember the angle of like the mics. They were just like this straight line. It was just in your face type of thing, and you couldn't even. I had it like up here, I swear.
Yeah.
It's just like, and then same with Dan.
Yeah.
So you might notice that if you go back.
Yeah, it definitely was not a polished performance for sure. But I think,
No
given
fault
the
of our own.
circumstances, I think we did pretty well to
Yeah,
pull
it
off.
was good.
To pull off what we did for our very first episode. So yeah, definitely go and check that episode out. It's on Pain and Suffering, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, really good topic. He handled that so well as well, and had some real life experience, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was episode 1 back in December of 2020. A mere 2 months after you first sort of pitched
got it
the
together
idea to
pretty
everyone.
quick, eh?
Yeah.
Church was really generous in helping us get some of this gear as well.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. So it all just fell into place. You kind of felt that God's hand was on it.
Yeah.
And particularly as we kind of got more guests as the year went on. That was such a blessing.
Yeah.
Is there any that kind of stood out to you early on?
So I will go to episode 2. Because that was an interesting episode with Patricia Wirracoon. That was our very first interview over Skype.
Yeah.
We only used Skype once. We now use Zoom, but our very first one over Skype. So that, for me, from a technical standpoint, that was a really nerve-wracking episode.
That was another one of those moments where I was like, she's not coming in person, Phil. And I see his face just go,
Yeah.
just blank.
Look.
Yeah, I'm like, he's thinking the cogs are turning. Yeah.
Yeah. So that required a little bit of technical gymnastics on my part, because
Absolutely.
I have never done anything like that before. So I spent an awful lot of time in the weeks leading up to it on Google and YouTube and going, how do I do this and how do I do that? What's the best way of doing that? I think the end result, it's definitely not our best.
No.
But
It was still good for our first one, I
for a
reckon.
first one,
Yeah.
it was still pretty
good.
darn good. Yeah.
Skype didn't do too well
No.
for us on that one.
Yeah, that's
Zoom's ended up being way better, hey?
That's right. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
much better platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Sorry, Skype.
Yeah, sorry. But I do remember the platform that we used for Slido.
For all the questions, yeah.
For all the questions, yeah. It's it's sort of got hijacked probably halfway through the Q&A.
I was on my iPad and all I see is these just spam messages just coming through. I was just like, oh dear. And then I can see that you're like getting rid of them.
Yeah,
behind the scenes. Yeah.
So I was in the back there trying to delete these messages as fast as I could, but they were coming in way too quick. And there was some pretty blunt stuff being said.
Yeah, it wasn't the most wholesome kind of things to be said.
So ultimately I went, this is ridiculous. Matt's got enough questions. I need to shut it down because it was getting out of control. But but yeah, that was in hindsight funny, but at the time my heart was racing because I know that there were people looking at everything that was coming through, and it was not nice.
And it was a bit of like a interesting topic to kind of talk about in the first place, like relationships and intimacy. Like there's varied views upon that, and whether different parents and so forth and kids sit in different spots to where they kind of share about that kind of topic and at what age and so forth. So we're kind of like, get it off.
Yeah.
Like, we wanted it to be safe and approachable still, which was good. Yeah, that was funny.
It was. At the time, not so much so, but with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah, absolutely.
We sit here and we do have a bit of a giggle about it. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there was, I don't know, this was just such a God moment. And it was, I don't know, I there's no credit to myself. Like we got John Mark Comer on the podcast like early on. I think it was episode 4.
Episode 4.
And we didn't do that one live because there was a huge difference in hours, like 16 hours behind us or something like that. But yeah, and people ask me sometimes, they're just like, how the heck did you get it?
Yeah.
And I could kind of be like, yeah, I'm just awesome. I just found him. Like me and him are buds, but it really wasn't like that. I didn't know him at all. And so I was searching online. I was like, this guy would be fantastic to get on. And I was like, you know what? I'll search him up, see how I can get a contact details, and I couldn't find nothing. I was just like, this guy must be really hard to get a hold of. He doesn't have Facebook. I couldn't find his email. I found the church that he was at and stuff like that. And then I found him on Instagram, and I was just like, all right, I'll give it a go, see what happens. And I messaged him, kind of told him the philosophy behind it, why we're doing it, and the kind of audience that we're after and stuff. And then I didn't hear anything back for a couple of days, and then I get a message back from him, and he's just like, bro, that sounds good. Let's tee it up. And I was just like, what? And I was just like, no way. I was just like, praise God. I just remember spamming Phil. Spamming you, just being like, he said yes.
That's right. I was away at work at the time, and I was driving along in the back seat of a ute with a whole bunch of guys from work, and my phone went off, and I had a look, and it was Matt. And it was just message after message after message saying, Phil, we've got John Mark Comer. Now, I've got a bit of a confession to make here because I actually didn't know who John Mark Comer was at this point.
Yeah.
So I was seeing these messages and
like,
Matt's going so excited. You had told me about him in the past, but I hadn't quite made that connection yet. So I was going, oh, okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, cool, Matt.
Who is John Mark Comer? And then, you filled me in. And, I must say there's a lot of wasted years that I didn't know John Mark Comer.
Well, same for me. I had known him for ages, but I was like, this guy is like revolutionary.
Yeah. Yep.
So good.
I remember the morning that we recorded that. It was at your house, and we had set everything up in your office, and we got everything ready. Everything was looking good, and it was probably about 10 minutes before John Mark Comer was due to jump on Zoom with us. Yeah. And the tension in that room
was high.
Sky high. It was ridiculous.
My dog was barking. I'm like, stop it barking.
Yeah. It was crazy. And I
was pretty nervous,
sitting opposite you, and I actually couldn't see the computer screen. I didn't know when John Mark turned up or what. And then all of a sudden, Matt just sits up, and he must have pushed the accept button or something, and he goes, hi, John Mark. And I was like, oh, it's happening. John Mark Comer's on the line. And that was the beginning of it. And
it really was.
I think that was Yeah, that was a really cool episode.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Mm.
It was so good. I actually was so happy with how that went. I thought about it a lot. I read a lot of his stuff
Yeah,
beforehand and kind of formulated a bunch of questions because I had an hour with him, which was really generous. But I was just like, I want to make the most of that. And I think starting it off with like a bit of a funny thing with the Aussie slang.
Yeah.
You can find that video online just by itself if you want. I think that was a good way because he's from America.
Yeah, Portland. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did have quite a good laugh at some of those.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a real treat, and
That was so cool.
And
Such a nice guy.
yeah,
Like, just to give up his time in general, but when you're talking to him, he just has a genuine kind of thing about him, and you're just like, man, this guy is so nice, man.
he is.
He was really cool.
Yeah, top guy. So
Absolutely loved it.
definitely a highlight there.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that was
John
probably
Mark.
one of my favorites for the year.
Yeah.
I reckon,
Yep.
for sure.
Mm.
I'm in talks with him at the moment, actually. So
Ooh.
keep watch this
Inside
space.
scoop, people. Inside
Yeah,
scoop.
inside scoop. So, yeah. Yeah. What else? What other kind of episodes? What were some other ones for you? Do you reckon?
I think episode 5 with Richard Gibson.
That was special for me. Yeah.
That was, yeah. Do you want to tell if people watch the episode, they'll understand why.
Yeah,
but how
sure.
about you just give us a bit of a fill in on
Yeah.
why that was so special for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Richard Gibson or Gibbo, he was my my principal and like one of my main lecturers at the college that I studied at Brisbane School of Theology, and I did my theology degree there. And I wasn't really an academic or anything kind of like that. I'll give you the short story. But he was just someone that just didn't give up on me, and he just invested in me and kept going. And I ended up doing okay, and he was really instrumental in getting me through, and kind of really enjoying this and being able to be here and as well and in the future. So, and he's just an uber smart guy. Like, you know what I mean? He's the most down to earth Aussie bloke you'll meet, but he's just uber smart, and he doesn't like me saying that. But but it was just really cool. Like, he taught me how to do Greek. He's got a Greek textbook that you can buy from Zondervan. Like, he's just a whiz at it. He knows everything about the Bible that I could ever like. Well, he doesn't know everything, but he knows a lot of stuff. He's been lecturing for a long time. So, and he's just been a really good mentor of mine. Always checks in on me, and we catch up, have barbecues and things like that. And I really wanted, not many people knew, as far as I know, about his kind of PhD on emotion and in the Bible. And I thought, wow, what a great topic in our day. Hey.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really cool, just hanging out with a friend, basically.
Yeah. You two really vibed that
Yeah.
night. You could see that there was definitely a lot more of a relationship there, and
Absolutely.
you could sort of a little bit of banter and
Yeah, it was good.
that was an enjoyable episode, that one.
Yeah, absolutely loved that. It is interesting. Like, some of the, like, I had never done podcasting before kind of doing this. I hadn't really, like, I had conversations. I have a retail background, as many people will know at this church. But so I can talk to people and things like that and have conversation, but I've never really done a podcast. So I was, the whole year, I think, like Philby's been learning the behind the scenes stuff. I've been learning like how to do this. You know what I mean? I'm just giving it my all, giving it my best. And I think it's gotten better over time. But some people, you just vibe with way more. Like, you know what I mean? Just straight away. It helps if you know them, like friends and things like that.
Yeah.
I felt like even Dan Patterson, like, I didn't know him too well at the start, but the next one I'd talked to him a fair bit. So that was heaps better.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah. So I think naturally, let's just head on to episode 6. Episode 6 was a big one. That was with Miriam Brown.
Oh, that was fantastic, eh?
Yeah, and so fun fact, episode 6 is our most viewed and most listened to episode after John Mark Comer.
Yeah, John Mark.
Yeah, so yeah, do you want to give us a bit of background on how you got in touch with Miriam and why you chose the topic that you chose to chat to Miriam about?
Yeah, so Miriam was Miriam and her husband were the psychologists and counsellor that I had to go to when I became a pastor, like a Baptist pastor. They require you to do a psych evaluation, just make sure you're not crazy or going to do anything stupid, which just makes a lot of sense, I think. And they were just so warm, such beautiful people, and they just had so many years of experience, and it was just a really good experience to be with them and chat with them. And I've been back to them a couple of times, even with my wife as well. They've been great with her because we both had to do it, because you get the team when you sign up as a pastor.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I think what I've seen is throughout, particularly being a youth pastor, is that you just see how youth and young adults, but you see how for so many people, mental health is a huge problem at the moment. Like not being mentally healthy is like the epidemic of our day, I think. Like probably more than COVID, but like it is the problem that we're kind of not focusing on, in my opinion. That is like going up at astronomical kind of heights and levels. So, and I didn't want it to kind of be like everything is mental health related and so forth. But so I didn't want, so there's kind of different, and you see it in the podcast, there's different kind of spectrums within at least the Christian world. It's kind of like you always have to trust God, and then it's just like, no, just go to a counselor or a psychologist at every single turn, that type of thing. And I was kind of wanting to come somewhere in the middle where we're kind of like, of course we go to God, but of course we use wise and gifted people that he's gifted, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for
and
sure.
There's a lot of different kinds of psychology and counseling out there. So I was just like, well, these guys were awesome. So I wanted to kind of get their experience and kind of, for the people that didn't know about mental health or didn't struggle, that was a big part of why I did it as well.
Yeah.
So they could actually kind of grapple with, I guess, this spectrum of what's happening in our world. And because it's hard to understand, like I don't have huge mental health problems or anything. Like I have my bad days, and you can listen to that kind of spectrum type thinking on the podcast. But it's hard to understand what someone's going through sometimes mentally, unless you go through it. So I really wanted to kind of have someone to break it down in an easy way and kind of go, okay, well, that's how it works, generally speaking, and what can we do to be mentally healthy? Yeah. Yeah, it was fantastic. I really liked it.
It was. And that episode, there were a lot of brilliant questions from the audience too.
Absolutely.
And yeah, Miriam just answered them with just the utmost sensitivity and grace, and it was really good.
It was
really
so good.
So
Yeah.
very, very poignant for this time that we're in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I highly recommend it. If you haven't watched it, watch it or listen to it.
Yeah.
Really, really good podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your kind of next phase, do you think? If we're going on highlights, maybe one or two more.
Probably, I think Sam Chan was up there.
Yeah, he was funny.
Sam Chan was, he is such a cool guy.
Yeah.
And funny story, that was another Zoom one.
Yeah.
And
we hadn't done any other ones before that, right?
We did.
Other than
no,
Patricia?
we did Natasha.
Oh, Natasha. Yeah.
Natasha
She was great
just
too.
before. She was.
That was a fantastic interview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Sam Chan, I remember we had the laptop with Zoom going up in the sound booth, and I was down on the stage doing a few last minute things, and I think Matt, you said, Sam should be due to come online shortly.
Yeah.
And I quickly went, raced up to the sound desk.
Yeah, I remember what this is. Yeah.
And Sam had already been trying to get in touch with us. I don't know for how long, but there was a little thing on the top saying, Sam Chan is trying to join your message. So I'm not sure how long you had to wait, Sam, if you're watching this, but I do apologize.
Sorry, mate. I actually think one of the things as well, from memory, I don't know if it was that one, but I think it was on my computer, and I was logged on the wrong Zoom account as well. And I just remembered, I was like, oh no. And then I ran to the back, and I'm like, no wonder they're not coming on.
Yeah.
That was funny. I remember he was like, he like most of the time they were in isolation in Sydney because he's from Sydney.
That's right.
And I kept seeing pictures of him like doing these big briskets in the backyard, and then I was just like, "How you going? Like, you ready for tonight?" He sends me a message back with like his brisket and stuff like that.
Yep.
Which was good. He was such a fun Aussie dude. That's what I really liked about him.
Yeah. And I think the topic for that as well was really helpful. Just how do we bring our friends and family into the conversation about God, Jesus, the church, Christianity, why we believe what we believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was really helpful to see that ultimately it all comes down to relationship.
Yeah.
And that was a real big takeaway. I think it was something that I'd always known, but hearing Sam articulate it in the way that he did was really, really helpful.
Absolutely.
And just to bring that home and say,
it was so good.
Look, it's all about your relationship with the other person that's really important. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was interesting how he kind of went through the different stages, I guess, of evangelism and how culture has changed, because his big thing is like, how do we do this in a skeptical world? How do we talk about Jesus, like you were saying? And I found that extremely helpful, some of the analogies he used as well.
Yeah.
So definitely have a look at that one if you want.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was good. I think Dan Patterson, again, just does such a good job. But Phil, I wanted to ask you a question. You don't know I'm asking you this.
Yeah,
I mean, most
I
of this is on the fly.
No,
but
I'm really scared.
why are you interested in doing this? Because you're quite passionate about this, like I am, but you're not always kind of being like, I want to be the speaker.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Why are you passionate about this? What does it for you?
Yeah, so I think it does come back to the whole premise that the way of life is built around is exposing people to different ideas, and particularly ideas that both yourself and myself and other people in our team have found really helpful and valuable in our own lives.
Yep.
And allowing people the space and time to be able to wrestle with those ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And question, like, why? Why do you believe this stuff? Why does it even make a difference? Why can't we just go with the flow and just go with whatever? You know, what's the point in putting the effort in to maintaining a relationship that is seen by the world as pointless?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why should we do that? So I think it's really important that we continue to investigate that.
Yeah.
And that's another. Yeah, that's one of the main reasons why I'm so passionate about bringing this to you guys, like all the background stuff. And second of all, it's a creative outlet for me.
Absolutely.
I love this sort of stuff.
And he's good at it.
Particularly, so not going to lie, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to this sort of stuff. I will spend hours researching stuff that would ordinarily bore the everyday person.
Again, another reason why I will never be able to do that.
So yeah, I really enjoy helping put together a really polished, engaging podcast for everyone to either watch or listen to. And yeah, that's another reason why I'm so passionate about it, is because it's using my talents for something that's worthwhile.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it, and I know our viewers do as well, man.
Oh, thanks, man.
It's so good. Yeah, man.
Yeah, we do have an incredible team that helps behind the scenes as well.
We've got a great team.
Big shout out to them as well.
Yeah, the boys.
Yeah, and girls.
And girls, of course. Yes,
boys and girls.
They're part of the boys, and girls. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we are embarking on season 2 of Way of Life podcast.
Yeah,
so
buddy. It's gonna be
season
good.
1 is done and dusted. Season 2 is just a matter of weeks away.
Yeah.
So
Just almost just under 2 weeks, pretty much.
yeah.
Which is going to be good. We've got Luke Barnes, who does a bunch of stuff with like cosmology and the universe, the Big Bang and all this kind of stuff. And he's a Christian guy, and kind of how to navigate all that. And I don't know, that's like one of the single biggest questions I get from a lot of youth kids and things like that. Is like, how does that work? Like, what do we believe in this? And I think he's going to be fantastic to have on. He lectures in Sydney as well, and does this, and he's written a couple of good books with a guy who does the same thing, but who isn't a Christian, but is just totally open to kind of taking the science and where it leads, which is really cool. Yeah.
That'll be a fascinating discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've actually got some really cool stuff coming up this year. We've got a guy named Michael Bird, or Mike Bird. He's in Melbourne. He actually lectured at the same place that I studied at for a little while. I did an apologetics intensive with him, but he's written a bunch of stuff with in general. He's just a writing machine, and it's all really good stuff. Funny guy, quirky, but he's done a textbook with N.T. Wright, for those of you who might know them or have a theological background. So he's pretty big deal in that sense. But he's a whiz at a lot of topics, but I'm not sure exactly where we're going to hone in. I'm thinking kind of like, can we trust the Bible? Or something along that, or how did it come together? Because that's another thing that people have a lot of questions about, but we'll see how that goes. As I kind of alluded to earlier, we have John Mark Comer. He has said yes, haven't locked in a time, so that's really exciting. I'm super pumped about that one, as I was last time. So that's coming in, probably second half of the year, I'd say. Live No Lies we're going to talk about, which is his new book, which is fantastic. It's such a good book. I'm on my second read at the moment.
Which you actually spoke about with him in your first podcast. Which was, quite a few months before its release. Hey?
Yeah, he was surprised I even knew about it.
I
did my little bit of research. Actually, wasn't that much. I just looked on Amazon. But we've got Carl Trueman as well, hopefully. In the first half of the year, who does a book I was just obsessed with, like Phil. He just that's all I talked about for a whole month with him, basically.
It is an incredible book.
He does a book called The Triumph of the Modern Self. The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self, which is really cool. So that's going through kind of at least largely the last kind of 100 or so years and a bit before that, and how we led up to the sexual revolution and the thoughts behind that, and kind of how to navigate that as Christians as well, which is going to be cool. So we've got some good people. Paul Copan as well. I'm letting everybody know what all these are.
No surprises this year, people.
No surprises. I mean, we've still got some other ones up our sleeves that are pretty keen, but these are some highlights for sure. Paul Copan, he does a book called Is God a Moral Monster? And that's kind of looking at the Old Testament God, as some people like to call it, and kind of some of the I guess more violent type stuff that you see there, and the kind of things that a lot of people have questions about, and you're kind of like, how does that work with a God of love? So that one's going to be really, really cool as well. Well,
it's going to be a good year.
It's going to be really so good. So make sure you like, subscribe, tune in. Again, we're not here to be kind of famous. We just want this to benefit people, and we want other people to wrestle with what way of life that they're on, and to be able to do that in a safe place. So please invite your friends to the events in person, online, whatever you want to do to support us. That would be much appreciated. It is our heart just to serve you guys and to bring good quality speakers on to wrestle with these topics. But Phil, thank you so much for getting up on the stage and doing this podcast, and thank you for asking me some questions. That's good.
That's all right.
But until next time, we'll catch you soon.
See you guys.
Bye.